So as the moderator, I will take the prerogative of asking the first question. You mentioned in your speech several times, quite repeatedly, the fact that Kashmir was a central issue, that it was the issue which had to be resolved with justice. My understanding was that one of the reasons why the Agra summit failed was because India refused to recognize Kashmir as a core issue. Yet at the SAARC statement this January, Kashmir was placed among a list of 8 issues to be resolved bilaterally between India and Pakistan. So is there a difference now in terms of what was there in Agra and what is there now? Perhaps you'd like to elaborate on that.
I would like to answer this question. It's very pertinent. Is there somebody speaking? Sorry.
Sir, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I said I would like to certainly answer this this question. There is not much of a difference between what happened at Agra and what happened now in the joint statement. At Agra, we exactly accepted the centrality of Kashmir and the requirement of resolution of the Kashmir dispute if we were to improve relations between India and Pakistan. Let me say that the joint declaration, the Agra declaration, was prepared in draft. It was prepared by me, myself, Prime Minister Vajpayee, Foreign Minister Jaswant Singh, and my Foreign Minister. We drafted each and every word of it, and I have a copy of the draft here with me, in the Foreign Office, not with me now at the moment. It was only after when I went back and I was to come back to a signing ceremony, which was the hall was ready and ready for the signing ceremony, that after an hour or two, I was told by my Foreign Minister, no, we are not going to have the signing ceremony because they have rejected this declaration. And then we even went forward and drafted another, redid the draft resolution. It took us some hours doing that, and it took a change in my schedule. And we again accepted a fresh declaration. And unfortunately, an hour or two later, that declaration was also rejected. And the reason given to me at that time was that the Cabinet of India has rejected this. So that declaration, the draft of which is available in Pakistan, accepted the centrality of Kashmir. Now let's come to this new joint statement. There are 3 areas here which were almost similar to the Agra declaration, that the centrality of Kashmir is accepted, that a dialogue process on all issues, including Kashmir, has to be undertaken. But one very important element is also there, and that is that Pakistan has been accepted now as a party concerned with the dispute, as one of the parties in the dispute. This was never done before. So therefore, I see that there is certain progress on the resolution of all disputes.
So what you're basically saying that you have kept the same position, but India has changed its position. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Agra was...
well, that's news to a lot of us, I think.
The draft declaration, which never came to be feared, and if you want, I can get this published any time. I can give the draft to you also, is similar to what we did now in the joint statement.
Let me give others
the very
a chance.
fact that Kashmir has been accepted as a dispute which needs to be resolved, and that Pakistan is a party to this dispute, was never accepted in the past.
I'd like to now call on General Malik, former Chief of Staff, to ask a question.
Thank you, Arun Puri. Good evening, General Musharraf. Firstly, I must say I'm delighted to speak to you over this satellite conference. I'd like to extend my warm greetings to you and good wishes to you. I must also compliment you for the speech that you made. I think it was both soldierly as well as statesmanlike. I recall that some years ago, when you took over as Army Chief in Pakistan, I had sent a letter to you, congratulating you and wishing you well, and you very kindly replied that some months later. Unfortunately, we had Kargil war soon after that. I'm not going into that part of history. And in fact, I would like to once again compliment you for the agreement that you have signed with Prime Minister Bajpai in Islamabad. And you both have raised the hopes of people on both sides. I don't know, General, when Kashmir problem is going to be resolved, but I'm very keen to find out your commitment to the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed in Lahore on strategic weapons CBMs. I was involved in that, so I know what agreement was signed. I would like to know how committed do you feel to that agreement which was signed in Lahore? If I'm sure you would know that that was in substantive nature. And if we want to go ahead with that, it will require working out more details between India and Pakistan. And if you remain committed to that, obviously that part can only take place if you give your assent. May I request your response to that? Thank you, General.
Thank you very much indeed. You've spoken about the strategic weapon CBM. The only thing that I would like to answer is, that first of all, I don't know the details of what that draft is, frankly, at the moment. But when we see the future, as I've said, we have to move in tandem between the CBMs and the dialogue process. If we start moving forward on the dialogue process, all CBMs can be addressed. I would not like to move fast on CBMs, any part of the CBM, if the dialogue process is not moving forward. So therefore, the strategic weapon CBM, the details of which I don't know, frankly, would certainly be a part, can certainly form a part of the overall confidence building measures in the future when we start moving forward also on the dialogue process.
The next question, I'd like Professor Amitabh Mattu to please ask that.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm sure you will agree that if we have to build a South Asian century, then we have to ensure that the bitternesses of the past, the conflicts of the present, and the enemy images that we have inherited have to end. And we have to ensure that the younger generation doesn't get poisoned by these bitternesses of the past. Would you, in these circumstances, Mr. President, agree to a collaboration between academics and educationists between India and Pakistan to design common courses, common curricula, and common reading material to ensure that younger people of South Asia have a common, positive, peaceful vision of South Asia, whether or not, Mr. President, we resolve the Kashmir issue? I hope you will agree that this needs to be done right away. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As far as the interaction between the academics and educationists is concerned, I would totally agree that there should be interaction. I am totally in favor of people-to-people contact. And when I talk of people-to-people contact, obviously academics and educationists form a very important part of that contact. But when you're talking of going for a common syllabus and a common curriculum. Now that I never really gave thought to. I never thought of achieving a common curriculum and a common syllabus for both our countries, or for that matter for the whole of South Asia. I don't know whether this is achievable or doable. However, since you come up with the suggestion, we don't mind looking into this. I think it needs contact between the academics and educationists to see viability of your proposal. I would encourage their contact first of all.
Well, that's a good sign. I'd like to ask now Geeta Mehta, who's a well-known author, Mr. President, to ask a question.
Mr. President, you've spoken most eloquently about the prosperity that peace would bring our region, and indeed of the longing of the people of India and Pakistan for peace. Do you believe that a sustained peace is possible in the absence of civil liberties?
Indeed. I mean, what are we talking of civil liberties? Are you talking of civil liberties in my country or your own country or in both the countries? I really don't know. If you're talking of my country, I think there are civil liberties in place, absolutely. Every country has its own environment and it works within that environment. And I don't think civil liberties have anything to do with a peace process between India and Pakistan. They don't come into the way at all. As I said, we must believe in sovereign equality and the sovereignty of both the countries. Whatever is the internal issues of each country should not hinder what is to be done on a bilateral basis. I don't think it, in any case, the issue of civil liberties, whether in India or Pakistan, stand in the way of a peace process and moving forward on peace.
Thank you. Mr. N.K. Singh, who's a member of the Planning Commission, Mr. President, would like to ask a question.
Mr. President, no one, of course, knows the answer to the question of whether economics drives politics or politics drives economics. But as Mr. Arun Puri referred, that you made a very successful visit to Davos, speaking to the international community, speaking to the investor community, as Pakistan's economy under your distinguished leadership has begun to look up. Pakistan is seeking direct foreign investment from all parts of the world, as was evident by your interaction in Davos. But the Indian business community, which is quite close to Pakistan, is looking at many gainful investment opportunities in Pakistan in the area of pharmaceutical, automobiles, oil and gas, telecommunication, and a whole range of things. Would you, Mr. President, in the spirit of what you said, namely taking simultaneous action on many fronts to improve the quality of our relationship, take some steps which can improve the climate of confidence for the private investor community in India to look to these multiple investment opportunities in Pakistan?
Thank you very much. Well, I think economics and politics both are important. Economics is important to every country. It lies at the core of any development. The country cannot progress unless its economy is made to move forward. But as far as politics is concerned, of course, politics is the overarching framework for any activity in a country. So therefore, they have an interrelationship. But in Pakistan, we are trying to set the economic trends or the political situation right in all its context. When you're talking of various areas of cooperation on the economic and commercial front between India and Pakistan, yes, indeed, one does recognize, and I do recognize, that there is tremendous scope for mutual benefit in on commercial and trade relationships. I mean, looking at even a gas pipeline which you need from maybe Central Asia or from Iran or from Qatar. It's just our confrontation and our animosity which is not allowing you to get this pipeline through. If we go for a rapprochement, I am sure this avenue will be opened. And what the other areas that you have mentioned are all areas where we can mutually look into complementarities and go for mutual benefits in economic relations. I totally would be favorably inclined if at all we move forward towards, as I said, towards resolution of disputes. Now, if you are meaning the relationship of economic and politics, that we can go ahead on the economic side without resolution of disputes, without bothering about the political aspects of our relationship, I'm afraid that is not possible at all. I think there is a relationship. We have to resolve political disputes between ourselves. We have to remove this environment of suspicion from each other, and then only can we go for investments in a big way, and as I said, complementarities of commerce and trade in a fruitful manner.
Mr. President, if I may add my two bit, how about allowing media to come into your country? Our magazines, newspapers. I know there are a lot of agreements, but it never really happens.
I wonder whether any newspapers and magazines of Pakistan are going to India. We need to see it as one of the confidence building measures. I mean, as far as we are concerned, I know that I've at least been telling everyone to allow maximum media personalities from India, whoever wants to come, to be allowed to come to Pakistan. I don't think that is the case when our media people want to go to India. I think there is more openness in our accepting media people, personalities coming here. When you're talking of newspapers and magazines coming to Pakistan, and of course Pakistan is going to India, one can examine this in the CBMs in the future. We can broaden the scope of the confidence building measures. But as I said again, we have to go forward on the dialogue process. We cannot be cantering and going on a sprint on the CBMs while the dialogue process is going at snail pace. That is not doable. So there is a complementarity, there is a simultaneity and a linkage between the CBMs and the dialogue process.
Thank you, sir. May I call on Mr. Naresh Chandra, former Indian ambassador to the US.
Mr. President, with your permission, I would first like to congratulate your cricket team. They put up a great show, and if I am not mistaken, chasing a high total, they put up 344 runs, which is some kind of a world record. And I think Inzamam and Javed and their colleagues need our congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, they did well. I think both the teams did very well.
Looking forward to much more exciting cricket in days to follow. We have all taken note of the strong leadership that you have exercised in pushing forward the current initiative. What is bothering some of us is that how broad and deep is the consensus in support of this move, and in times to come, will all sections in Pakistan support this move? And in this context, I think the earlier question about allowing free flow of information in both countries is very important, because our experience has been that the information which flows through the media might not be the best way to condition our people to be informed and to help in addressing the problems and issues that are under discussion. If you could throw some light on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you indeed for congratulating my team, Pakistan's team. As I said, both have done well, and we also in Pakistan look forward to a very interesting series in the future. On the issue of free flow of information between the two countries. I think there ought to be a free flow of information between the two countries. One point that I would like to raise here is the issue of parts of the media stopping to badmouth or creating negative perceptions between the two countries. One of my main concerns is when we know Indian cinema and many magazines also showing the negatives of Pakistan. I think the media on both sides need to be more mature, show more maturity in dealing in talking with issues of each other, because now that such confidence building measures and a peace process is in place, I would say that media needs to show more maturity, and I think deal with maybe encourage more closer relationship, encourage better understanding between the two countries rather than highlighting the negatives and exploiting maybe to a certain extent situation in respective countries. We should stop that and encourage better, more harmonious media interaction.
Thank you, Mr. President. Perhaps letting them open out is probably the best way. You talked about Indian films. We have, in fact, here one of the leading Indian film stars, Aishwarya Rai. She'd like to ask you a question.
Good evening, Mr. President. I'm going to be asking a question of no relevance to the fraternity I come from, not the film industry. But I would like to ask you, if I may, as a layperson, as an ordinary individual, a citizen of India, Mr. President, it's truly positive, the trend right now, as we feel there is the first steps towards camaraderie between our two nations. But sir, hamari jo tehzeeb hai, as we hug each other today, what I would like to ask you is, are we truly feeling the warm vibes of love between us, or are we still skeptical and looking over our shoulders? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I'm very glad to be asked a question from one of the most popular film stars of India, whom one knows here in Pakistan also. Your question is related, in fact, part to the last question, which I think I did not answer. How deep the process or the desire for peace between India and Pakistan is. Let me say, I'm very sure about Pakistan. It is extremely deep. I think all sections of society in Pakistan want peace, want interaction, want harmonious relationship between India and Pakistan. When we went for a joint statement between myself and Prime Minister Vajpayee, there was a surge in our stock exchange. There was a great optimism with the signs of hope that was emerging. I know this is the reality in all segments of society, in all the provinces of Pakistan. There are some extremists now, I know that, and such extremists are also in India, and we know that also. We should not bother about that very small minority of extremists, and we must go for peace in a bold manner, because we know, and I know, that vast majority of Pakistanis are for peace, for developing harmonious relations, for going for people-to-people contact, going for commerce and trade relationships. So I'm very clear about what Pakistanis want.
Mr. President, I can safely say that most Indians want the same thing. May I request now President of CII, Confederation of Indian Industry, Anand Mahindra, to ask a question.
Mr. President, I represent a company called Mahindra & Mahindra, which was born in 1945 as Mahindra & Mohammed. And the co-founder was Ghulam Mohammed, who after partition left us to become, I believe, the first finance minister of Pakistan. Of course, we couldn't afford to print new letterheads which said M&M, hence the name of the company, Mahindra & Mahindra today. But arguably, because of that history, we are amongst the most willing companies in India to collaborate, to go back to the future, as it were, and collaborate with Pakistani companies. But in my recent interactions with Pakistani businessmen, contrary to something you said earlier, I find them very apprehensive about the dismantling of trade barriers because they believe Indian companies with their greater size will swamp them. Now, I do admit Indian businessmen had the same fears about China, but today we have a trade surplus with China. Do you, Mr. President, share those kind of concerns? And if you don't, what can you do to allay those fears of businessmen in Pakistan, and how quickly can you move to dismantle barriers?
Well, yes, this is an important question, but let me tell you, I have been asking many businessmen in Pakistan if we were to collaborate and interact economically in commerce and trade, business interaction, would we be swamped? The point that you've made. Those good businessmen of Pakistan, the people who have a strong business ventures in Pakistan, are very confident that they will not be swamped. So therefore, I'm fairly confident and optimistic that it is not a case of us protecting ourselves from the swamping or the strength of the business community of India. We know that you are large, but we have our capacity, we have our quality also. Many good businessmen of Pakistan think that they will gain advantage through access in your market. So I think we should go ahead optimistically, and I am very sure that there are a lot of mutual benefits that will come our way. Now, the business executive or businessman that you interacted with, I don't know who you interacted with. As I told you, I know many business executives here who feel very confident of gains when we interact with you.
So does that mean, Mr. President, that opening up could be round the corner even if the Kashmir issue is not solved?
I am known in India, I think, as a unifocal person, a person who just can't forget about Kashmir. Or let me honestly, I feel odd also. I really feel talking of Kashmir all the time. I do understand. But let me say again, I think I would be most unrealistic if I said anything other than what I've said. No leader in Pakistan can sideline the Kashmir issue. Now, this is the reality, and we cannot do it. If we think that we can go ahead on all confidence-building measures and forget about Kashmir, not doable by any leader in Pakistan. We must understand that. And I'm afraid if we don't understand this basic issue, I don't think we can move forward. Let me put it very bluntly. I don't think we can move forward on the confidence-building measures. I don't think we can move forward on the economic interactions unless we move forward on resolution of all disputes, including the Kashmir dispute.
Well, that's quite clear, sir. I'd now like to ask Mr. Sunil Kilnani, who was one of the speakers at our conclave, to ask a question.
Thank you. Mr. President, in a sense, I'm picking up on a number of questions and views that have been expressed already. You must sense how we here in Delhi, as I'm sure you're in Islamabad, are deeply hopeful at the moment of a historical reconciliation between our two peoples. My question is a very simple one. What do you see as being the largest obstacle to that, either in terms of substance or process? And what do you see us in India as, what would you like us to do to try and remove that obstacle?
Sorry, I didn't get your question. Obstacle in the way of normalization of relations?
Yes, in terms of achieving a reconciliation between our two peoples. What do you see, either in terms of substance or process?
I have said that entirely. My whole speech contained that, and I think the main issue is to develop confidence in each other, trust in each other, and this can only be done through resolution of disputes, all disputes. And when I say all disputes, again I'll have to say including the Kashmir dispute, and that is the stumbling block.
Well,
I've made it very clear. That is what is stopping us. That is what is impeding relationships between the two countries.
Well, let's hear the view of, or not a view, but a question from a former Foreign Secretary, Mr. Kamal Sibal. Perhaps can get around Kashmir.
Mr. President, I listened to your speech with great attention, obviously. All of us are very hopeful about the new process that has begun between India and Pakistan. And we were asking ourselves as to what is the message that you might give us this evening. Now, I'm not sure whether the message that you have given us enhances the sense of hope of optimism or reduces it. There has been a feeling that because of various factors, there has been a change in mindset on your side. But if one really carefully analyze what you've said, there are some legitimate doubts in our mind about what we may expect from the current process, because what you've clearly said is that Kashmir remains central, and unless there's forward movement on Kashmir, nothing else effectively can move, including economic cooperation. And then you also suggested, which is a bit worrying, that in case there was no serious effort to resolve outstanding disputes, including Kashmir, the current CBM process may not move forward. And in fact, we may go back to square one, as you said. Now, as you know, our major concern, as against your concern about Kashmir, has been the issue of terrorism. So I do hope that when it is suggested we may go to square one, would not mean that there might be a resurgence of terrorism. Now, the question, in fact, I want to ask, and the context in which I want to ask is, that India and China are both nuclear weapon powers, yet nobody talks about nuclear tensions between India and China. India and China have an unresolved boundary question, which, from our point of view, is a huge problem in terms of the occupation of large parts of our territory by China. And yet, we are willing to put aside this very difficult issue and move forward with China in every possible way. Our trade with China in the last 3-4 years has in fact gone up to over $7 billion, double our trade with Japan, and the prospects are wide open of a normalization, progressive normalization of relationship between India and China, and both the countries are able to profit from this and in fact contribute very meaningfully to peace and stability in Asia as a whole. What is the difficulty that you might face, Mr. President, on your side in emulating the example of India and China?
Yes, indeed. I'm a realist, and I am a soldier and not a diplomat also. Therefore, I believe in talking straight. I don't believe in saying things which I don't really mean from my mind and heart. I don't believe in bluffing my way through, saying something and then going back when we get onto the dialogue table. So therefore, while my words may sound very sour or very harsh to you, but let me tell you that they come from my heart. If you don't agree with them, that is a different issue altogether. When you talk of change in mindsets, if you mean that we ought to change our mindsets and forget about Kashmir, and you are comparing ourselves, the relationship between India and Pakistan, to your relationship with China, I'm afraid there's a lot of difference. Here we fought wars, we fought 3 wars, and there is a line of control, an issue which is a United Nations Security Council recognized dispute, existing since over 50 years. Every day, when there was no ceasefire on the line of control, we were killing each other. I wonder whether you've been in Siachen. Your soldiers are there. I've been to a very big heights there. I know how life is. I know how they are killing each other there. I know all along the line of control. I've been to the front lines everywhere. Now these are realities. If we can push this reality behind and forget about all this truth, about all this reality on ground, and say there's nothing happening in Kashmir, just let's forget about it, and let's remove all our soldiers, and while the Indian army carries on whatever is happening inside Kashmir, I'm afraid it's not doable. And when you talk of the threat that I am giving, that the terrorism may start, etc., no, not at all. I am not giving that threat at all. We don't think there is terrorism going on in Kashmir. We think there is a freedom struggle going on in Kashmir. So I'm afraid we'll get involved in all the discussions that are hackneyed now, and we must not do that. We have made a new beginning in the form of the joint statement between Prime Minister Vajpayee, your leader, and myself. The text of this joint statement is very clear. It states very clearly that Pakistan and India must resolve all disputes, including Kashmir, that Kashmir is a dispute which must be resolved to improve relations, and that Pakistan and India are party to this dispute. Now, are we saying that we are going back on this joint statement? This is written in black and white. Let's read it. Now, if we are to go back on this, now who is sidelining what? Who's changing what mindsets? We are not changing any mindsets. We are not talking of history, of the past. We are moving forward. And the basis of this forward movement is the joint statement between myself and Prime Minister Vajpayee. I will adhere to this joint statement in letter and in spirit. There will be no failing on Pakistan's part or on my part to go back on any word of this joint statement. You be the judge. You read this joint statement, and let us see what happens now onwards in May, June, and then in July, August, when the foreign ministers meet. It's very clear that we have to move the dialogue process forward. The whole world knows about it. So I'm afraid let's not get involved in giving examples of China and India relationships and saying that we should just forget about disputes and start moving. You don't have much of a dispute with China. And as it is, may I say, China is a very large country. Maybe a strategy of coercion would not apply to China, between you and China, whereas it does apply to your relationship with Pakistan. And I think in the past, the issue has been, and the concerns of every Pakistani has been, the coercion that they have been suffering from your country. In our region, sir, may I say that in our region, the size of India is disproportionately large as compared to the other nations. That demands a certain magnanimity from you, from India, being the largest partner of the region. That magnanimity has to come from your side. It cannot come from smaller partners. So therefore, I think I would leave it at this. There is no change in mindsets, really. I'm talking of reality on ground. Let's not forget reality on ground. And let's not, I think, if we see each other with sovereign equality, our concerns must be addressed. And Pakistan's concern certainly is the issue, all disputes, including Kashmir. We cannot sideline it.
Mr. President, we really appreciate your straight talk, so I hope you won't mind if I do some. One country's freedom fighter is another country's terrorist. So the people who've attacked you, attempted assassinations on you, if they reacted that they were freedom fighters, what would be your reaction?
Well, certainly my reaction will be very violent. I wish I knew them. Maybe I would have dealt with them in my own hands. Obviously, I would oppose them. Certainly, I mean, there is no doubt in my mind. Anybody trying to undertake suicide bombings, killing innocent civilians, I would be the last person to encourage that. But I don't know whether you're equating this with what is happening in Kashmir. That is where I wouldn't agree with you.
Could we get away from Kashmir? I was referring to Kashmir, actually.
You were, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Let's turn this a little bit. Let me call on Dr. Amit Mitra, who's Secretary of FICCI, Chamber of Commerce of India.
Mr. President, you would be happy to know that we Indian businesses today afraid of being flooded by Pakistan. How come? An exhibition from Federation of Pakistan Chamber of Commerce and Industry on Made in Pakistan visited Delhi, and 40,000 visitors swamped the exhibition, showing the kind of affection, love and commerce that we can do between each other. Only this week. However, Mr. President, I must humbly suggest that the most favored nation treaty still eludes us from the end of Pakistan, though we have signed the SAFTA agreement. Our unofficial trade, Mr. President, is approximately 1.7 billion US dollars, which should all be official trade. No lorry can go from Amritsar to Lahore. There's not even a warehouse in the no man's land. In other words, the potential is there, but we are dithering. Could you give us, in few words, what is your exact vision of opening up, what measures you wish to take towards the synergy between our two economies in specific terms, Mr. President? Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly there is a lot of synergy. And I'm very glad if somebody in India thinks that Pakistan can swamp the Indian markets. I'm very glad at this. Yes, we have some potential, some areas of strength which can be of use to benefit Pakistan. But I think opening up trade and commercial relations will benefit both the countries. We will have a large market, certainly, because you are about 1 billion strength. But at the same time, your products will find certainly a market in Pakistan. So it will be to the mutual benefit of both. But as I said, when you talk of vision, I have given my vision. I mean, I don't want to repeat it. There is certainly a linkage between political relationships between the two countries and economic activity and commercial activity. You cannot isolate the two. I mean, when there is hatred between the two countries, we are killing each other, as I said, daily. We have fought wars. We don't like each other. We have just played a cricket match after 15 years. How can you think it can be milk and honey in just few days? And it can be milk and honey without resolving those disputes? I think we are not being realistic. And that is all that I am saying. I know that all of you sitting there may be getting disappointed because I am saying I'm talking of same things, of removing the confrontational aspects of the relationship. But I will repeat, I am a realist, and I believe in a practicable approach to problems. We have to resolve disputes and then go forward to commercial, economic, trade relationships. This is my vision. I don't think one can we can sideline the political aspect of our relationship and go only on our economic and trade and commercial relationship. That is not practicable. That is not doable. It is very unrealistic. I mean, that is my vision.
Sir, it seems to me that whenever Indians and Pakistanis meet or they go visit each other's countries, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of affection, great amount of hospitality, and it sometimes seems that it's the politicians who are getting in the way. Do you get that feeling?
Yeah, I said that. I said that in my initial statement, that the problem is with the leadership. Yes, the people want to have peace and harmony, but if you come here and say that you just forget about Kashmir, I can tell you that the answer that you'll get will be different. That if you come and say here that forget about all political disputes, let's have good economic relations, you're going to get a different answer. What the hope and the positive optimism that has developed now is because people here think that we are going to resolve all our disputes. It is not only because we are going to develop economic and commercial ties between each other. The optimism is, and I will repeat, is mainly because people here have started thinking that our disputes are going to be resolved.
I believe Indian films are very popular in Pakistan. We have here one of the leading film directors and producers, Mr. Subhash Ghai, who would like to ask you a question, sir.
To be very brief, we all know that we have been fighting wars and facing political differences. But as a movie maker, as a writer, director, producer, I always felt that our movies, music, and our stories have been receiving a warm welcome by the people of Pakistan. Somewhere by heart, we are the same. By culture, we are very close to each other. And it would be a really very, very happy news for the film industry, for the artists, for technicians, and if we can really join hands and make movies together for each other in future. What do you think the future of welcoming each other if everything is settled down?
There is scope. I think on the cultural interaction, there is a lot of scope. When you are talking of your film being popular in Pakistan, yes, they are popular in Pakistan. But let me also say that the war movies and the Kashmir movies that you produce are not, repeat, not held in good stead here at all. Because I think you make, and I don't want to be very blunt, I don't think you are realistic at all, and I think you try to portray or try to ridicule our forces, which is not at all held in good stead here. And you overdo it in many of your movies. I haven't seen many. I did see one, I don't want to name it, because there was so much talk about it, and I found it to be absolutely absurd. And I would request Aishwarya Rai, who's sitting there, not to act in such movies. I think they are quite ridiculous when you come to because they are most unrealistic. They are absolutely unrealistic, and I wouldn't like an artist of your stature, Ashwarya, to be acting in such movies. I think there should be some balance in portrayal.
So that's that. Mr. President, does that mean you will allow love stories to be distributed in Pakistan? Barring war films.
These are absolutely all right, as long as they are a little realistic. I mean, they shouldn't be absolutely, totally unrealistic and one-sided, that you are dealing with pygmies on the other side and there are heroes going around on the other side. I mean, let's be a little realistic.
Let me ask a person from our journalistic community, Shekhar Gupta, to ask a question.
Yes, Mr. President, let me try and shift the subject from something as contentious as Kashmir to something on which there should be greater unanimity, namely democracy. This is an unusual year. 72 nations around the world are going for elections, the most ever in human history. Second point, no two democracies in our history have ever gone to war with each other. And third, of the countries going to elections this year is also India. So my question is, in this great global march towards democratization, don't you feel that your country is getting badly left behind? Two, if so, what is it that you plan to do to bring in more democracy in Pakistan? Maybe that would even further the cause of peace, because democracies don't go to war with each other. Third, do you have any anxieties about Indian elections? Elections throw surprises. You can presume nothing. So are you brushing up your Italian a bit? And for the easier part of my question,
the last part?
Yes, the easier part of my question, will you announce one more easy CBM, which does not have to wait the solution of Kashmir problem, and allow to be telecast in Pakistan? Why deprive your people of the entertainment that our politicians can provide? Very often it's better than our cricketers. And sir, having said that, if you permit me, a little note of correction. You said that from Agra to Islamabad, India moved a notch in accepting the centrality of Kashmir. I am an independent observer. I also have access to some drafts, as I'm sure you're senior journalist. I would like to also suggest that Pakistan moved a great deal, in fact, from Agra to Islamabad in giving commitments on cross-border terrorism, which it had never given in the past.
Okay. Let me answer the last part first. I have always, about 100 times, in United Nations, every forum, been saying that Pakistan is not at all in favor of any kind of export of terrorism from Pakistan into any other area. I've been saying that all along. And I have also clearly been differentiating between what is happening in Kashmir. We in Pakistan don't call that cross-border terrorism. We call it a freedom struggle. So I don't think we have changed our stance. However, I mean, let's not dispute or let's not tear this very sacrosanct document apart. There is a joint statement which has been initiated between Prime Minister Vajpayee and myself. I think it's a very good way forward. We must not try to undermine its value through extracting bugs in this document. So I will leave it at that. I think the document is very good and it's a good way forward. Now, when you started by talking about democracy, I take very strong exception to this. If you think that there is no democracy in Pakistan, I'm afraid I don't agree with that at all. So I don't even want to answer this question. There is democracy in Pakistan. Elections have been held in Pakistan, and everything is being done in a very democratic manner. Democracy believes in human rights. I think the human rights here are maybe in many ways better than human rights in your country. Freedom of speech, freedom of media, freedom of expression maybe in many ways is more than your country's. So that is also a part of democracy. Other than that, if you're talking of other issues, the constitutional issues, parliamentary issues, I think everything that your country is going through is happening here also. So I think I don't agree with you at all if you are meaning that there is no democracy in Pakistan and we need to move towards democracy. We have our own environment, and also, may I say, we don't accept anybody from outside Pakistan to meddle in our internal affairs. We run our country the way we like it to be run, and we don't expect any other country to interfere. If I was to tell you that you need to look after minorities in your country, you need to stop carnage going on in Kashmir and in Gujarat, how would you feel about it? You need to ensure more human rights by not be attacking Sikhs in the Golden Temple, by not destroying the Ayodhya mosque. I mean, we don't want to interfere in your internal affairs. So why are you interfering in our internal affairs, whether there should be democracy or no democracy? We deal with sovereign equality. We deal in our country's internal affairs as we want. So please don't get involved in what we are doing in our own country. Beyond this, the relationship between our two countries have to be developed based on the joint statement arrived at between Prime Minister Vajpayee and myself. Pakistan will move forward on each and every aspect of that, and we look forward to a very good start. Whether there is democracy in 72 countries and holding elections, we've already held our elections and the next elections are due in 2007. We will do that on time. Our local body elections are due next year. We will hold them in time. So I don't really know what you are inferring when you say that the elections are being held in so many countries, and how does it pertain to Pakistan? I don't know.
I don't want to interfere in your internal affairs, but could I just, for my information, know whether former Prime Ministers Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif could return to Pakistan?
Benazir has gone out on her own volition. We didn't send her out. She went out herself during the previous government's term. There are certain charges that are there against her, and she has to face those charges. Nobody has told her not to come back. As far as Nawaz Sharif is concerned, he has gone back through the mediation of a friendly country and a friendly leader. And he also went laughing all the way on his own volition. The whole family went there. And they are there on their own accord with their own sweet will. And they can only come back when this agreement mediated by this friend comes to an end.
I'd like to call on the former High Commissioner to Pakistan, Mr. G. Parthasarathi. I'd like to ask a question.
Good evening, Mr. President. I have three separate questions to ask you, very specific. After the recent controversy which we've had about Pakistani scientists being involved in nuclear proliferation, the question has arisen of greater transparency in Pakistan's nuclear policies. Could you let us know when and if Pakistan will have a formal nuclear doctrine instead of continuously saying that Kashmir is a nuclear flashpoint, whatever that may mean? My second question, Mr. President, is you spoke of the fight against terrorism in Afghanistan, and you're taking on the Al-Qaeda on Pakistani soil. The Americans and the Afghans also speak of a Taliban presence in Pakistani soil. Do you intend to take them on as firmly as you intend to take on the Al-Qaeda? And lastly, third question, Mr. President, I come from southern India, where we have no relatives in Pakistan, and the present visa policies are very restrictive, only for friends and relatives. Don't you think if we want to get to know each other better, we should have normal tourism like any other two countries would have? Thank you.
On the nuclear doctrine, we very much have a nuclear doctrine. I don't know how you think that Pakistan hasn't even got a nuclear doctrine. Let me tell you that our strategic assets, the command and control, the custodial controls that we have established may be better than yours. And these are all documented as far as the nuclear doctrine itself is very much there. So I think you are misinformed. We have a doctrine. And it has no relationship with the Kashmir dispute as such. As I said, we have a defensive strategy of minimum defensive deterrence, and that is what we are following. Talking of Al-Qaeda and Taliban, yes, we are operating against Al-Qaeda in our tribal region in the frontier province. When we talk of Taliban and whether we are going to act against them, this term Taliban is the most misunderstood term. When you say Taliban, who are you meaning really? I would like to ask you, who are you meaning when you say Taliban? If you are meaning all the Talibs which are the products of the students studying in our madrasas, they are Taliban. If you are meaning all of them, certainly we are not acting against them. If you are meaning all the Pakhtuns in Afghanistan, certainly we are not acting against them at all. So who are the Taliban really? So we identify Taliban as far as we are concerned very clearly. This is the previous Mullah Umar's government, their abettors, their supporters. We will not encourage them to be here at all. We will not allow them in Pakistan. And we will certainly arrest them and send them back or deport them to Afghanistan, as we did in one or two cases where we did catch a few of their members and send them back to the Afghan government. So we will act against them, certainly. I have said that we will act against any non-Pakistani in Pakistan. That includes anybody, whether it is Al-Qaeda or Taliban. But we need to be clear on what we mean by Taliban. The last item, the last issue that you raised was the visa issue. Our visa restrictions are complementary. I think all restrictions somehow are the same. You lay down similar restrictions and we do the same. I think when we go for confidence building measures, we move forward on resolution of disputes. I am very clear that these issues of visas will be getting resolved more amicably in the future.
At least that's not tied up with Kashmir. I'd like to request Mr. Rajinder Pawar. He's an eminent businessman of India. I'd like to ask you a question.
Mr. President, before I talk about information technology, which is the subject that I'm involved with, I do want to make an observation. Right through these last 45 minutes, I experienced periods of joy and periods of sadness. Whenever we were talking of cold logic and reasoning, I felt very sad. Whenever we shared any moment which was about emotion and feelings, I felt very good. And I think that's really been the situation between these two countries for a long time. So while we were rejoicing and enjoying the game of cricket, the moment we start discussing logic and reason, we just seem to be going backward. In some sense, the new dialogue, which is opening many fronts, a lot to do with feelings and emotion, and some to do with logic, I think the balance is valid. But I tend to feel that if you can give feelings a bit of a lead, logic will follow. There's an old saying which says that the way the East thinks and the way the West thinks is different in one respect. We say in the East, have faith and proof follows. And in the West, we've said that we believe that have proof and faith follows. My humble suggestion is that as we get into this very important phase of breakthrough, I see it as an opportunity of breakthrough, let's not try to overbalance feeling with logic and emotion. If we have to make a little bit of a difference in these two, let the feelings come forward, because I think the warmth which is getting generated and can get generated will resolve the tricky problems we are trying to solve. That was just an observation. On information technology, I think there are opportunities. India is surging ahead. We are beginning to find tremendous opportunity for people in India as we look at the outsourcing business opportunities in the West. From India, we are already beginning to look at building development centers outside of India. And we're talking of Philippines, we're talking all the way of China as well. It is only natural for us to look at Pakistan as a partner in this. This is also a field where you don't need to move too many goods, too many bodies. Connection can be established, work can be done virtually. I believe that this is an area where cooperation could be very rapid and very quick. And yet it's not figuring among the important points for discussion. I'd like to know your specific view on whether you think the whole field of IT is something we should get a much more serious look on how we could do collaboration. I'd like to hear your views on this.
Thank you very much for your idea of logic and emotions. I think both are important and they are interlinked. We cannot set logic aside and go only on the path of emotions, because they will fail. However, I take your point. I do take your point. Coming to the issue of information technology, I do know that India is doing very well in information technology. Pakistan now, in the last 3 or 4 years that my government was in place, we developed an infrastructure, information technology infrastructure, and we trained our manpower also. And I think we have tremendous potential in information technology, in the development of information technology. And I very much agree with you that this is one area where we can collaborate for our mutual benefit. We certainly, when we move forward on economic or commercial interaction, information technology has a lot of complementarity to benefit both of us, and we would like to move forward on this.
That's positive. I'd like to now call on Mr. Jay Panda. He's a young MP in our parliament. Mr. President, he'd like to ask a question.
Mr. Musharraf, we Indians...
President.
Mr. President, we Indians have long had a secret and grudging admiration for you, for your vigorous, energetic, and nimble style of leadership which you have demonstrated. But it is that very nimbleness with words and sometimes facts that has some of us wondering how serious you are about peace. And then that other issue that Mr. Shekhar Gupta raised about democracy. Now, even accepting that Pakistan today has a democracy and is evolving, by your own statements, there is a further evolution expected when perhaps you will cease to have 2 posts as both the Chief of the Armed Forces as well as President. Now, some people think that we should take advantage of this period while you do have both posts. And some people think that, well, perhaps democracy ought to have that further step of evolution which you yourself have announced before we can really have a chance for peace. So tell us, Mr. President, why are you the best person for us to deal with and deal with now to have peace?
Thank you very much. First issue of how serious I am about peace, and the doubts that you have that maybe I am not serious about peace. Well, let me put it bluntly that we have very serious doubts that you are not serious about peace. So who is right and who is wrong? I don't know. So that is what I say, that there are suspicions on both sides. We think that you are following a strategy which will do good to you and sideline issues, sideline disputes, and you are not serious about peace. This is the main suspicion of Pakistanis here. But similar is your suspicion when you say that you think that I am not serious of peace. Now, I feel it's very odd that you sometimes in India and even now in this forum, I feel a little bit of a ridicule when one talks of Kashmir, as if this is something that is so this is such an unimportant issue which is being spoken about unnecessarily over and over again. This increases our suspicions that what we've written in the joint press statement between myself and Prime Minister Vajpayee, maybe you don't mean it. Maybe the people of India don't mean it. When we've written that Kashmir is a dispute which needs to be resolved, maybe you don't mean it. Because this is our suspicion exactly. It has existed in the past, and now when in this elite August forum, if everyone thinks that it's a very minor irritant that I'm raising unnecessarily and trying to emphasize it unnecessarily, it disappoints me. It disheartens me. It saddens me also that we maybe don't want to resolve it, and we think that we can go forward on all issues. So let me say again, with all my conviction, I am very serious about peace. But if your version of peace is don't resolve political disputes, that is not my version of peace. So there is a difference. We need to sit down and clarify and really reach an understanding before we proceed further. I only hope that Prime Minister Vajpayee and the interlocutors, the foreign secretary, the foreign ministers who are going to interact, are very clear in their minds on what we have decided in that joint statement, and we move forward on that. What I have told you on the simultaneity, on the linkage between confidence building measures and the dialogue process is nothing new, let me tell you. I have verbatim said this to Prime Minister Vajpayee also. I am not saying something new to you, which I haven't said to anyone else. And this has exactly been told to your foreign secretary also when he came here. And it will exactly be told to your foreign minister when he meets my foreign minister. So really, I mean, let's be very clear. If we think that we can just go on economic ties, cultural ties and relationships, media interaction, exchange of films, exchange of artists, and that is all, I am afraid we are the most unrealistic people. We haven't succeeded in the last 50 years. I don't know whether we'll take another 50 or 100 years to succeed again. I am not the man who can really sit here and be unrealistic and impractical and don't address issues and hide my feelings, be hypocritical when I come in front of anyone, whether it's on the negotiating table or an August gathering like this. I am not that. I've tried to be realistic, but in my realism, if you think that I am being very stubborn, very obstinate, not understanding your point of view, I am very much understanding your point of view. I very much understand the realities on ground, and I very much also do understand what is the way forward. But I don't think the way forward is as you people are thinking. That disappoints me. And the faster we understand and are prepared to be bold enough to face realities on ground, that much the better. Otherwise, I mean, when I say we wouldn't be able to move forward, I'm not trying to raise alarms. I'm just trying to be realistic. It will not happen, not because I don't want it, because those are the realities which have existed for 50 years and cannot be sidelined and forgotten. So if you think they can, well, okay, let's try. But I am afraid we'll fail again. I don't want to fail, but let's leave it at this. I mean, this is my feeling. I only hope, with all my seriousness, with all my sincerity, that we move forward on the path of peace.
Thank you, President Musharraf. Please give him a standing ovation.
Thank you.